Welcome to IVF This, episode 182, IVF and Helpful Thoughts. Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. After 10 years of primary and secondary infertility due to both male and female factor infertility, I am now the mother to 3 beautiful miracles. I am married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you how to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go. Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you're all doing so well today. Summer is in full swing. I hope that wherever you are enjoying, whatever weather you're enjoying, that you're having fun. And if it is the summer for you and you're traveling, I hope you have amazing travel and safe travel. And if you're one of those people that just really enjoys hot weather, we will never agree on that, but I love you regardless, and I love that you find joy in that. So just know that I am always rooting for you, even if we don't root for the same things, right? Today, we're going to talk about something that I've hit on a lot over the course of the podcast. I talk about it in a lot of like how we reframe things, but I wanted to talk specifically about finding helpful thoughts. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So when we talk about helpful thoughts in the context of infertility and grief, I'm going to talk a lot about grief in this episode, right? Because a lot of what we experience during infertility and IVF is grief, right? The IVF process and the infertility journey in and of itself is a massive experience in grief, both from like a macro level and a micro level, meaning that the overall experience of IVF, of infertility, that's from the macro level, as well as those like tiny little moments of pain and loss and disappointment. So if I say grief or grieving, it is within the context of IVF and infertility. But I also want you to know that these can be helpful and useful within the context of any type of grief. So I want to start out with what I mean by helpful thoughts, what I don't mean about helpful thoughts, and why choosing your thoughts matters in the first place when you're kind of in the throes of grief, in the throes of infertility and IVF. And then I'm going to offer you a whole list of thoughts. I think there's like somewhere in the neighborhood of like 15 or 20 where you might like to try on, see how you feel in them, like similar to like going to a store and trying on clothes. That's what trying on new thoughts is. Like when we intentionally think about things, we have to try them on, see if they feel right, see if they feel true, see if they feel accurate, see if they feel helpful, right? It's all about fit and style and all of those things, right? What works for me might not work for you and vice versa. And that's not a bad thing. That's just a thing because we're all different. So we have to start out with understanding kind of our thinking, right? So human brains love efficiency. It's one of the favorite things that our brain does. And so we have all of these existing thought patterns that in our brain just run. They just kind of run in the background. We don't think about most of the thoughts that we think, if that makes sense. We think tens of thousands of thoughts every single day. Most of them we are not choosing on purpose, right? They just kind of show up in our brain. And I gotta say, a lot of them are really not so helpful. When we notice thoughts are just showing up in our brain that aren't super helpful, we get to be the ones that choose what we want to think instead. And I know that that sounds a little bit maybe woo to you or maybe completely unattainable. I assure you it is incredibly attainable. A lot of it just comes down to awareness and what you're willing to think. Are you willing to be wrong about how you've always viewed your life? Like that your life will not be full of despair and darkness and sadness while you're in the midst of this IVF cycle, that only a baby can bring you joy and happiness. That's not true, right? Are you willing to be wrong about that? So that's a lot of what goes into kind of identifying and understanding what helpful thoughts are and how they can be used for good for us. Now, what I don't mean, absolutely, unequivocally, I don't mean toxic positivity. I don't mean forced gratitude. I'm not interested in minimizing your experience, negating your experience, or disregarding the truth of how you are experiencing anything. I am not suggesting that we try to make light of something that is hard. I am not suggesting that we compare our experience to that of others and use it as a way to be mean to ourselves. That is not what I'm talking about. That's never what I'm talking about, right? What I'm talking about is choosing the sentences that we think on purpose so that we can create more of what we want, right? For a lot of us, we just kind of want neutrality while we're in the midst of IVF, right? We don't want to be at the mercy of the emotional roller coaster that we go through. Some of us want to feel or hold on to a sense of calm. Some of us want to be able to access hope or excitement a little bit more readily or available. Not all the time. We don't get to experience any emotion 100% of the time every single day. But some of us want to create more of those emotions like hope, excitement, happiness, peace, calm, neutrality, groundedness. Those are the ones that I hear most often that people want to. And this is kind of the pathway to do that. So I'm going to give you 5 reasons, although they're admittedly probably more, but this matters, why choosing our thinking matters. First of all, because it's number one, the way that we can control things, right? We can only ever control 3 things: how we think, how I feel, and what we do, right? And actually, the next episode that's planned that we're going to talk about power grabs in IVF in grief and when they're helpful and when they're not so helpful. But in this instance, I want you to think about why they could be helpful, because when we're grieving, it can feel like everything is outside of our control. When we're in the midst of infertility, everything is outside of our control, right? We want one thing and we're trying to control for 50 million things, right? That's when we take 2 fistfuls of supplements. That was when we throw away all of our Tupperware for glassware. That's when we get rid of anything scented, candles, shampoo, conditioner, things like that, right? Those are our attempts to control our external environment when we really only can control ourselves. Because the awful truth is that what is happening, or what has happened, right, wherever you are in your journey, is that we didn't really want to have happened what happened. And suddenly everything feels like it's changed. And sometimes, a lot of times, it feels like we just get the rug ripped out right from under us, or it's like we're caught in a massive storm. And it just feels like we are at the effects of lots and lots of things that we didn't ask for. And I got to say, that's incredibly common. None of us ask for infertility. None of us are like, hey, you know, it would be really fun if I sunk tens of thousands of dollars and multi-year depression into something. I would actively choose. No, none of us do that. None of us actively choose that, right? So when we can remind ourselves that while we definitely can't change what is happening or what has happened, we do have the power to choose our internal experience and how we respond to it. Maybe not our initial reaction, by the way, but we do get to choose our response to our reactions. And I think that that's a very empowering shift, and one that we don't want to overlook, because it gives us a say in our own experience, in our own grief. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So again, pay attention to an upcoming episode. We're going to talk about power grabs. It'll make more sense. I didn't coin that term power grabs. That was from another coach, and I just really liked how she phrased it and how she put it. So I chose to use that phrase. Now, I'm not saying create a new emotional response in a way that you are ignoring the one you're having, right? I hope that makes sense. I'm not saying disregard or bypass your pain and try to cover it up with something positive, like happy thoughts. I'm talking about choosing thoughts that make our pain more bearable, that reduce our suffering, that remind us that natural, normal pain and grief is grief is supposed to be painful. This experience really does not come without some sort of pain, right? I talk about that concept or that idea a lot, that, you know, we're already on the IVF train, there's not a pathway, there's not a track that you can jump on that is without pain, because you absolutely could choose to stop treatment, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be painful. You can continue to pursue treatment. That doesn't mean it's not going to be painful. And you can choose to take a break from treatment, and that doesn't mean that that's not going to be painful, right? They're painful in their own rights, but nobody rides for free, as Brene Brown says. So what I'm talking about is moving from thoughts like, I'll never be happy, I'll never have the family that I dream of, that I desire, that I desperately long for, which I've definitely had that thought. But I can still find moments of happiness, right? I won't always feel this way. So that's very different than saying I have to feel positive and hopeful because that's the only way that this process will work. And trying to talk ourselves out of the emotions that we're feeling and try to polish a turd, if you will. I don't know if that's a saying I heard a long time ago and it just felt right to include in this episode, but that's essentially what we do when we try to force gratitude or force toxic positivity. We're just trying to make something shine that is not meant to be shined. So choosing what we want to think in grief and in IVF can be a way to take control. It can be a way to create a new emotional response. It can be a way to build resilience. Regularly choosing constructive thoughts, useful thoughts, helpful thoughts helps us build resilience. And remember that resilience isn't about avoiding sadness. It's never about what we talk about in this podcast is never about avoiding emotions. It's about developing the skills that are required of us to navigate sadness, to deal with sadness effectively, where it doesn't take over our entire world, right? It's that we're better equipped to deal with the challenges that are in front of us. We're better equipped to deal with the sadness and subsequently the sadness that might someday come, right? If we're still living, we are still at the risk or still subjected to sadness, to grief, to potential loss, right? So building these skills now really is a testament to what you're going to be able to manage effectively and feel about yourself in the future. And I think also that helpful thoughts in grief and infertility really do shape our experience, right? And I want you to think about that, right? When we're dwelling in this negative space, when we're thinking these thoughts that focus more on the negative, and by nature of doing so, kind of disregard anything that isn't negative, our brain just kind of sifts it out. Our brain has decided, we're going to focus on the negative. And so it's going to sift through all of the thoughts and all of our experiences and only show you and only provide you with information on the ones it deems also negative. You've already given your brain a directive as to what it's looking for. When it's, I'll never be happy because I won't get the family that I dreamed of, or it's taking so much longer, your brain is going to show you all the things about your life that will never make you happy, or that you perceive to never experience happiness around, right? And it will also not show you the things that are right in front of you that might be evidence to the contrary, that you could be happy again, that this next cycle could work because you had better luck in the previous cycle than you anticipated, right? Because all IVF cycles are just data points. And so it's because of this filtration system that our brain does, and that's what it's supposed to do, but we find evidence of our thinking. So when what we think matters, it matters so much. It shapes all of our experiences. It shapes our experiences of our relationships, of our work, of our IVF, our grief. It shapes everything. How we think shapes and tailors itself to how we experience the world, right? So have you ever noticed yourself thinking some thoughts that are very heavy, and then thinking more heavy thoughts on top of those heavy thoughts, like building a sad story on top of a sad story? And it's like a little spiral, but we never have fun when we spiral. We never have a joy spiral, right? But again, it's not saying to ignore or dismiss or minimize what you feel. I'm saying notice the power of your thinking and decide when a thought is useful to you and when it is not, and kind of talk to your brain. Don't just let it air out whatever it wants to say and just pile pain on top of pain. And this is a huge part of what I do in my coaching program, by the way, because the challenge can be that sometimes we don't even spot our own thinking, we're not aware of it. You can't tell when thoughts that you're thinking are actually optional. They will feel so incredibly true to you that it's hard to tell sometimes. But when somebody's not in your brain, like me, we can tell you. It's really easy for me to point out the thoughts that you have, right? Because I'm not in there. I'm not in that mess of systems, that I'm not clouded with all of the emotions that you're experiencing. So I have a more objective way to view and help you, right? And it can be hard to change those patterns without the right tools. And so this is one of the things that I love doing. That brings me to my last reason. Hopefully I'm selling you on choosing all these helpful thoughts in your experience, in your journey. But my last reason is that it really does enhance the quality of your life. And the quality of your life matters. It matters so much. I know you've probably been taught to believe that everybody else's quality of life somehow matters more than yours, or your quality of life, or your life will start once you have your family. I take a huge exception to that. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone who's ever listened to this podcast episode. Our quality of life now, even in the throes of infertility, even in the throes of IVF, in the middle of all the shots and the procedures and the tests and all of the things, our quality of life still matters. You're not some robotic automaton just going through the motions trying to create a new life. That's not how this works. You are a fully fleshed out human before you got on this journey. Your quality of life matters. How we feel day to day, especially when we're in an IVF cycle, whether it's a stim cycle or a transfer cycle, the actions we take, how we interact with people, with the world, those things are all important. Our quality of life is important. Our mental well-being is important. Our health is important. And we can still focus on all of those things, even when we're going through IVF. So constructive thinking, helpful thinking, useful thinking, thinking on purpose is what allows us to create that quality of life that we deserve. With a baby or not, we still deserve a good quality of life. It's what allows us to maintain the connections and the quality of connections that we want in a meaningful life, and to live the way that we want to live into our values, which is a massive, massive part of well quality of life. A high quality of life is living within our value system. So we can choose our thoughts on purpose. We can choose helpful thoughts while we are deep in grief, while we're still in the thick of our journey. We can still do that on purpose. We can choose those thoughts. So I hope I've sold you on why this is so important. I'm usually not this selly on the podcast, but I really do want you to think about your thinking about your thoughts and how they impact you, and how you want your thinking to work for you instead of against you. Okay. So I've got a list. It's a pretty long list, somewhere in the 15 to 20 range. Sometimes I get started and just keep going, as evidenced by this podcast script today. So here are some helpful thoughts. Now, thoughts don't universally feel the same for every person. So as you listen to these, see what it feels like in your body when I say them or when you repeat them. See how they feel to you. Do they feel believable to you? Do they feel good in your body? So that's why I want you to pay attention to these. I don't want you to take this list of thoughts and declare that, yay, verily you shall think all of these thoughts moving forward and never look back, right? Because some of them work for you. Some of them may not work for you. And that's what I'm interested in, is finding things that work for you. So here we go. First, in the words of Megan Devine, who wrote, "It's okay that you're not okay." You can think that thought. I think it's a very useful thought. It's okay to not be okay, right? I have found in interpersonal relationships and things like that, it's an incredibly helpful thought to think, right? The worst thing, and I want you to think about this, the worst thing that you're going to experience is a feeling. And you've already felt a metric shit ton of feelings throughout this process, right? So if the worst thing that can happen to you is a feeling, well, you've shown tremendous determination and grit in the face of a lot of feelings, right? So think about that. If this is the worst thing, is going to be a feeling, and I know how to navigate those. I know how to experience those. The worst thing that can happen to humans, I argue, outside of like actual death, maybe I should put an asterisk on the worst thing, but in the sense of this podcast, is a feeling, right? And look at you. You've already allowed so many of those. How about, I'm an imperfect human doing the best that she can with what she knows. I tell myself that a lot, especially like if I'm reflecting on a decision that I've made and maybe it didn't pan out the way I thought or the way that I expected it would. I remind myself that, like, hey, I didn't have perfect information. I made the best choice, the best decision with the information that was available to me, because I'm an imperfect human, right? And that's okay. An imperfect human does the best that she can do with what she knows. I can love myself through this part of the experience too. What if we told ourselves when life got rough, I can love myself through this part of my experience too? There's no wrong way to do grief. Do you know that? There's no wrong way. There's no wrong way to do IVF. Unless you're not following your doctor's instructions and you're not taking your medications, there's no wrong way to do IVF. Maybe other people in your world think that there is a wrong way to do grieving or to do IVF or to do your infertility journey. Well, that's okay. They're allowed to be wrong, I guess would be the best way for me to put it. But there's truly no wrong way for you to do it. And so I find that to be a helpful thought. And notice when you feel and when you think these thoughts, I want you to close your eyes. Maybe that will help, right? Try to think on them, think them, see what they feel like. I'm figuring it out. Did you know you're not supposed to have it all figured out? Did you know that there's no user manual for how to navigate IVF and infertility? Did you know that having normal, natural emotional responses to emotionally provocative experiences, that's normal? You're supposed to have those. You're supposed to make mistakes. So another thought would be, my feelings are valid and they deserve my care and attention. My feelings are valid and they deserve my care and attention. Now, I will say that with a slight asterisk, which is that your feelings are valid because they're caused by your thinking, right? So whatever you're thinking is going to create what you're feeling. So everybody's feelings in that way are valid. This is not to say that some feelings are valid and other feelings aren't. That is a sweeping statement to say that whatever you feel is okay. No matter what you're feeling, it ultimately makes sense. And when we tell ourselves that it's not okay to feel the way that we feel, that's when we start to make it harder on ourselves, right? Don't do that to yourself. You don't need to. Your feelings are valid and they deserve your care and attention. Grief is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of deep love, care, connection, and longing. That's all. So many of us judge ourselves and tell ourselves how we feel makes us weak. Any emotional experience makes us weak. And that's not true. Now, there's a lot of things like sociologically that go into that. But ultimately, grief is not a sign of weakness. Grief is a normal, natural response to any perceived loss. Full stop. Every day is different, and I'm doing the best I can with each one. Remember that grief is not linear. Nothing about life is linear, honestly. It's like a giant scribble everywhere. We're up, we're down, we're here, we're there, we're everywhere, we're forwards, we're backwards, whatever there is. Every day is different, and I'm doing the best I can with each day. That is grief. That is your experience. That is your journey. You're already doing it, so you might as well give yourself the credit and not cut yourself down for feeling grief. I can find support when I need it, and it is okay to reach out for help. You can. It's okay to reach out for help. Support is available. There are amazing humans who want to support you, humans who have gone to trainings and devoted their lives to supporting you and helping you. Some humans that just love you deeply and have no training, but are still a great support. You can find support when you need it, and it is okay to ask for help. It is okay to laugh and have fun, and it doesn't mean that your priority isn't still building your family. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to distract yourselves, have activities that are restorative in nature and that have nothing to do with infertility, IVF, or grief. But a lot of times we don't allow ourselves to do those things. We don't get to reap the benefits of that restorative activity if we judge ourselves while we're doing them, right? That's actually the antithesis. They are no longer restorative if we judge ourselves and give ourselves a hard time for doing those. We have to give ourselves permission to laugh and to have fun, and to remind ourselves that it does not mean that we, don't long for this. It doesn't mean that we are happy that we lost our baby or that the transfer failed. It doesn't mean any of those things, right? It just means that you are allowed to experience humor and happiness and laughter and fun, because that's a part of the human experience as well, and an important one. My grief experience, my infertility experience is unique, and it's okay that it doesn't look like someone else's. And also, it's okay that it doesn't look like maybe the last one you had, right? Maybe this transfer cycle or this stim cycle is a lot harder or more emotionally heavy or emotionally challenging, emotionally taxing than the last one. That's okay, right? Our grief might be different from one experience to the next, to the next, to the next. Like grief is an incredibly subjective and unique experience, even within the context of infertility and IVF, right? Just because the first cycle, you feel like maybe you took the failed cycle on the chin, doesn't mean that by having a harder time sifting through all of those big feelings, it doesn't make the first experience superior and the second experience inferior. It makes them two different experiences. Okay. I'm allowed to set boundaries to protect my energy and peace of mind. You get to be the one who chooses your boundaries, what they look like, who they're for, what they're for. My feelings of sadness coexist with hope for the future. It's not one or the other. It's and. It's and. Remember, I feel like we've talked about this on the podcast. Maybe I had an entire episode dedicated to the word and, but it is an incredibly powerful tool in healing. It all exists together. It's not binary. It's not black and white. It's not one or the other. It is all of it. You can be simultaneously sad and have hope for the future. You can be simultaneously sad and also feel joy. It is okay to redefine what happiness looks like for me now. Happiness in this chapter, and that's a really important part. In this chapter, this moment, happiness may not look like happiness from the last chapter of your life. If we keep insisting that it does or it should, it's probably going to get really frustrating and you're only going to feel demoralized and depressed. Okay. It's okay to redefine what happiness looks like for you now. This process can change you. It doesn't make it a bad thing, right? We're constantly evolving because I guarantee you, the way you're going to redefine happiness in your next chapter is also going to look different. And it's okay. That's what it's supposed to. But holding yourself to a standard based on expectations that don't exist anymore, right? If you're telling yourself that, 5 years before you started really trying to get pregnant, you were just a happy, carefree version of yourself. Yeah, you probably were. It doesn't make that experience more superior. It makes that experience more nostalgic, like you want to get that, but it doesn't mean that happiness has to look the exact same. You're more than likely not going to be carefree in this process. I haven't met someone going through IVF or infertility that is just like, whatever happens, happens, right? I mean, that's a perfectly valid approach to it, but I don't meet many women who are like that. Right? So it's okay to redefine what that experience is for you. I'm grieving or I'm on my family planning journey at my own pace. I'm grieving at my own pace. It is not a race. There is no finish line. Nobody gets any prizes or medals. Not a race. I am grieving at my own pace. Again, going back to the definition of grief, a natural human response to any perceived loss. We're always going to have a response. It might change over time. It probably will change over time. The loss is never going to be undone. This experience will never be undone, right? Once you live through it, once you experience, you don't really go back. Therefore, grief is always going to be there in some form or fashion. It will not be this acute. It will not be this visceral that you're feeling right now or that you could be feeling right now, but it doesn't mean it goes away. Sometimes I still get, a little caught in my throat when I think about what we went through for 10 years trying to build our family. And that's okay. Like that's a grief that I'm willing and readily welcome because it was a testament to what I was willing to do. Okay, I promise we're at the home stretch. I am more than my grief. I am more than my infertility. I am more than my IVF. You choose any one of those or a combination of all three. These experiences do not define you. Some days it feels that way. Let's be fully transparent, fully honest. Some days it feels like it has swallowed you whole. But you are more than this experience. You are a human having a grief experience. You're going through a really, really hard time that nobody could have prepared you for, and you're handling far better than you would ever give yourself credit for. You are more than your experience. I can handle tough days, and each one I manage shows me my resilience. Like it's a reinforcement, right? Give yourself credit for every bit of the resiliency building days you have already endured. Your brain will want to tell you that you can't handle it, that it's too much, and those aren't necessarily the most helpful things. So talk back to it. No, it's not too much. I've lived through, right? You might be exhausted. You might be experiencing a little bit of grief burnout. That doesn't mean resiliency isn't still there, right? You're still moving forward. You are not stagnant. You are not stopping. I can cherish the past and still make room for new experiences, changing of relationships, changing of dynamics, things like that. Kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, when you compare yourself to, the years before your infertility and IVF journey and how carefree you were, you can cherish that you had the privilege of that experience, right? And privilege, that's not a bad word. You didn't have the burden of knowledge that you have now of what can go wrong and how it can be much more complicated to build our family, and things like that. So yeah, you can cherish that memory of you being, however old you were when you imagine it in your mind that you kind of want to go back to, and still make room for new experiences and still make room for that new version of happiness or redefining what all of that means. The future, what we do in the present and in the future does not diminish anything from the past. I think I know I've said this before, but we're coming down. We got the last couple. Just stay with me. It's okay if others don't understand my experience or agree with my choices. It is okay that others don't understand my experience or don't agree with my choices. Who in your world doesn't understand your experience? Who in your world doesn't agree with your choices? They're there. I know they're there. I had them. Everyone has them. They are there for all of us. And if we're always insisting that they need to understand on like a granular level, or that they need to agree wholeheartedly, then either we will be trying to convince them, which is an unhelpful use of your very limited energy bandwidth, or we'll be trying to change ourselves, neither of which is particularly enjoyable. So what if we just went with, it's okay if they don't understand our experience. It's okay if they don't agree with my choices. I can still love them. And I would hope that you still believe that they love you or that they express that they still love you. But understanding doesn't require experience with it, right? They can understand that this is hard and that this is terrible and things like that. And they may not have to have lived through it. It doesn't mean they're going to always show up the way that you need them to. Most people in our lives don't show up exactly the way that we need to. But as long as love is there and that compassion and the guiding principle of this person does support me, that's what we want to focus on. Last one, oldie but a goodie, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. Remind yourself of this. You've done so many hard things already. There is so much evidence that this thought is true. Go back, look for evidence. What are the hard things that you've done? Make a list if you need to refer back to it. I think that's super helpful most of the time, just to reflect on some of the challenges that you have faced, right? So here's what I want you to remember. Lots of thoughts are showing up in your brain because you're human, and that's how brains work. You didn't choose most of them on purpose. They're just patterns. They're just like a cog in a wheel, just kind of going along. Your brain offers you a thought, tens of thousands of them all day long. Some of them are useful and helpful. Some of them are not. And you get to be the one that chooses how you think. Now, I want to reinforce this. You may not get to choose the thought that just automatically shows up in your brain, but you, once you notice them, do get to choose what you think next. What is the next thought? What is the next helpful thought or the next productive thought, the next empowering thought that I can think? And it's not toxic positivity. That does not mean we're putting lipstick on pigs or polishing a turd or anything, right? Or trying to find happy things or dismiss or minimize the reality of the emotions that we experience. It's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is using these thoughts as tools to create what we want. Thoughts as things to move us forward with what we want. And I want you to remember that different thoughts feel different to different people, right? So try the thoughts on, see what feels good to you. You be the boss. All right. Ultimately, it's not my decision what thought for you to think. just wanted to offer them to you so you have a language to start developing your own. Take some of mine, don't take some of mine. Again, this is all buffet style. It's all cafeteria style. Take what works for you and leave what doesn't. And that is always the end goal for this podcast. Okay, I know this was a long one. Thank you for hanging in there with me. I hope you have a wonderful week. Remember that you've got this. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.